Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things could get totally radical. Now today is a very big show for me because I will be interviewing a very underrated actress who comes from Hollywood royalty. Her name is, of course, Anne Lockhart. She is the daughter of June Lockhart, who played Timmy's mom on Lassie. And I'm having her on the show today, courtesy of my very good friend, Laurie Jacobson. She was in such classic low-budget movies as Joyride, Sunburst, The Serpent Warriors, and of course, her biggest role was the role of Sheba on the classic space opera series Battlestar Galactica. And she played a younger version of her mother in the 1986 Empire classic Troll. And I'm just so excited. I can't wait to have her on today. I've always loved the movie Troll, and I've always been a fan of Anne Lockhart. She's one of the most beautiful women of all time. So, here is my interview with Anne Lockhart.
Hello.
Hey, Anne, this is Tommy calling to do the podcast interview.
Hi, Tommy. How are you this morning?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm okay. I have you on speakerphone. Is that all right?
Oh, that's perfect, because that's what I have you on.
Good.
It's such an honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, well, I'm happy to do it. I told Lori to apologize to you for my unreliability in the past. I have this job where they don't give me a whole lot of notice.
Yeah, that's perfectly all right. At least we're doing it now.
Yeah.
I don't know if Laurie told you, but swearing is allowed on the podcast, and nothing offends me.
Well, I'm not planning to swear unless, the roof falls on my head while I'm sitting here or something. Then you might get a couple of cuss words out of me.
Okay. Oh, that's funny. So, going back in time, you, of course, are the daughter of June Lockhart from Lassie and Lost in Space. Did she instill in you a love for acting early on?
I couldn't help it, Tommy. An interviewer once asked me that, why are you an actor? I was with this man, and I said, I can't help it. I mean, I think it was genetically programmed because my grandparents were both actors as well. Do you know that, her parents?
Her parents? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I did.
And her grandfather, too, was on the stage. So, I think in my case it was sort of inevitable. God, I used to put that poor woman through. I'd put on plays every Saturday in the backyard and make her watch, like just rambling one woman, one 4-year-old doing stuff. She didn't, I knew from when I was 4 that this was what I wanted to do. But she wouldn't let me do it as a kid. I mean, I did some commercials with her for Campbell's Soup and Kool-Aid and stuff, and
Right.
I got to be an extra in the schoolroom on Lassie. But basically, her theory was, you're a kid, it's your job to go to school. If it's what you want to do when you're out of school, then go for it. So that's how that worked.
Yeah, so it's genetic in the family.
I kind of think so.
Do your children act as well?
They have, but it's not, and they're wonderful. I mean, they both were doing Shakespeare on stage with me when they were children. They both have been members of the Screen Actors Guild and done a couple little movies, and my daughter has done some voice commercials. We for about 10 years, which was kind of cool. Well, sort of because my grandparents and my mother were in that original 1938 movie. So it was 4 generations of us. And every year as the kids would get bigger, they would grow into, the next part. My daughter started as little Fan, and pretty soon she'd worked her way all the way up to the oldest, Cratchit's daughter. So that was fun. But it's not, they're not hungry for it. They both have different lives. I mean, they're quite good. And, I told my daughter, look, if you want this, you could be the next Gwyneth Paltrow. And she was like, so they're not, it's not as pressing with them as it is with me.
Yeah. And plus they grew up in a different time, when the internet came and everything.
Yeah, I guess I never thought about that, but,
Yeah. And, you were born in New York, but raised in Brentwood?
Yeah, I was born in Manhattan, and then my mom and dad split up, and we moved to my sister and my mom and I moved to California, and I would just go back to visit my dad for summers and vacations and things like that.
Nice.
And it was shortly after we moved to California that my mother started doing Lassie. I mean, in the beginning, she was when we lived in California, she was commuting to New York practically weekly. And back in those days, it was an 8-hour flight, because she was doing a lot of live TV, and it all originated from New York,
Right.
Doing Steel Hour and Robert Montgomery Presents and those kind of shows.
Right. And I was reading that at 18, you made your stage debut in 40 Carats.
I did. With my mom. I was working with my mom. So it was fun.
Were you?
And we subsequently toured around. This was back in the days of, when they used to have summer stock and dinner theaters. They don't exist anymore. But, man, I'll tell you, it was wonderful training. Wonderful training for a kid. We did 40 Carats together, and we did Butterflies Are Free together.
Were you nervous at all?
Curiously, no. It was, you always get little butterflies before you go on stage, but I was like, hey, I know this. I know my lines, and I know where to stand and where to say them, so let's get it on, It was really, there were other members of that original 40 Carats cast who were just nervous wrecks before we went up, but I was fine. I was too naive to be nervous. I just went out and did it,
Yeah. Were there any other big name stars or people who went on to become stars in that play?
Well, my dear friend Alan Hunt played Peter Latham in that play. He has had a long and wonderful career, and he's one of my dearest friends. And he's now a very fine director. In fact, he directed those 10 years of Christmas Carol.
Nice.
And he is the nephew of Marcia Hunt. I don't know if you know that name.
Oh, yeah.
She was a fabulous. And Marcia's still going. She's like 103.
Yeah. Yep. One of your earliest movies was the Western Joyride.
Yeah.
Was that fun going on location in Mexico and reenacting the Old West?
No, not really. It was pretty awful. It was okay, but it was a bad production with a terrifying director who was just terrified me. This is like way before Me Too, but that's definitely what was going on with this dude. And they fired him and got somebody. I was like 18 years old, alone, way down in Durango, and it was a full Mexican crew. I spoke Spanish, but I really felt like a fish out of water. And I actually called my mother one night. I said, I don't want to be an actress anymore. I want to come home. And I was also terribly miscast. I was 18 and right out of Catholic school, and they hired me to play a hooker, which I really didn't have the depth of performing skills to go there. So, I guess it was kind of a baptism by fire, and I'm glad I got it out of the way when I was a kid.
Wow. Yeah, that's sorry that you had that. Mm-hmm.
I did meet. There was another movie shooting in Durango the same time that we were there.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Kid Blue.
Oh yeah.
And I met Lee Purcell, who was working on that movie, and she has been my lifelong friend all these years.
Yeah, I think that's a Dennis Hopper movie, right? Kid Blue.
Yeah, with Dennis Hopper and Peter Boyle and yeah, Warren Oates was in it.
Yeah, I mean, generally it's every actor and director's dream to do a Western, but I'm sorry you had a bad experience with that.
Well, I was really looking forward to it, and unfortunately I never really have had other Westerns really haven't come my way, Mm-hmm. I used to love all those Westerns, and instead I did space Westerns. I mean, I think Battlestar Galactica was wagon train in space,
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. Yeah. And then you did a very bold movie that probably couldn't be made today called Sunburst. And
yeah.
I actually watched it yesterday.
You did? God, I don't think I've ever seen it.
Yeah, it was on YouTube. Yeah.
Jeez.
What was James Polikoff like to work with?
Oh, he was charming. He was a lovely man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I interviewed somebody the other day who worked with him on another movie. I'm going to reach out to him this year. I see he has a website. How about working with Peter Hooton?
He was okay.
Yeah.
He kind of disappeared after that movie, didn't he?
Yeah, he did like the pilot for Doctor Strange, the comic book hero, and then that was it.
Yeah. He was a very nice fellow, as I recall.
Mm-hmm. Robert Englund, before he was Freddy Krueger.
No, he was darling. And he actually helped do a lot of fixing that script because it needed a bit of work. Mm-hmm. He and Jimmy Keach did a bunch of work on it. And then I would see him years later, because he was in a band called the Generators. Have you ever heard of the Generators?
Yeah.
And I used to go down to the Santa Monica Pier and see him and Billy and Miguel, and it was fun.
Yeah, I met him at a convention. Very nice guy. He doesn't like to disappoint his fans. He likes to talk to every single one of them for like 15 minutes, and there's like 400 of them in line.
Yeah, that's like Dirk Benedict. Dirk Benedict will talk your ear off. I mean, he'll visit until the gals come home.
Yeah.
And the line is endless, but that, I think that's wonderful, especially when I see other people at these shows that don't even look up. They just sign their name and they don't even look the person in the eye or find out, what's your name? Okay, dear Mary, and then sign it, They don't. I kind of prefer to know a little something about them. So.
Yeah.
I'm a talker too, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had my share of those as well, meeting at conventions. Yeah.
I'm just so grateful they remember me.
Yeah. And then you did a movie I really, really like. It's one of my favorites. You and three other offspring of Hollywood royalty, Joyride.
That was a very cool little movie. It was made for like $1.98, but it was a good picture. It was a really good picture.
Yeah, did Joseph Rubin intentionally want to get, Hollywood royalty offspring together for this movie?
No, I think it was kind of an accident. He knew Bobby, because I think he'd done Pom Pom Girls with Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew he wanted Bobby Carradine in it. And then I think Melanie might have been next. I was the last one cast. I know that. I know I was the last one cast.
Yeah.
So I don't think that was the plan. I think it was just kind of a happy accident.
Yeah, did you all know each other before?
I might have met. Yeah, Bobby. I knew Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
He was my neighbor. I knew all those Carradine boys. Bobby was my neighbor, and in fact, I used to babysit his daughter ever.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the emergency call list for her nursery school if they couldn't reach her dad. And Bobby and I are still friends. So.
Yeah, I met him at a convention. He's also a great guy. And I interviewed his niece, Callista Carradine, David's daughter.
I know Callista. I knew David.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with Keith several times.
Yeah.
And then there's Michael Bowen. You know about that brother?
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of those.
Michael Bowen, yeah.
I've worked with Michael. And Chris Carradine is an architect. And he took one of my puppies. When my dog had puppies years ago,
mm-hmm.
he took one of my puppies. He's a brilliant architect and actually designs all of the facades and buildings for Disney World.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. That was a long time ago, too. Cool? Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. What was Melanie Griffith like then?
She was darling and very sweet and 19 years old and lovely.
Yeah, that was like at the time she was with Don Johnson the first time.
No, she was already divorced from Don for the first time.
Oh.
She and Bobby had a romance that went on for a while, so.
Oh.
Not a long while, but a while.
A while, yeah.
She was already divorced from Don.
Oh, okay. Desi Arnaz Jr. was your love interest in the movie. You two worked very well together, I have to say.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
sweet time, yes.
Yeah, that scene where you're in the red dress and he rubs your foot. That's a really funny scene.
You've really done your homework. You've dug up old stuff, haven't you, honey?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you were so pretty and so innocent. Did you think that playing a naughty girl like that would hinder you getting wholesome roles in the future?
No, it didn't seem to.
Yeah.
And I certainly was, Miss Wholesome from then on out.
I know, ironically.
I was in an airport once.
Mm-hmm.
And, the actor Don Stroud.
Yeah, who played, he was Moondoggy in one of the Gidgets. Yeah.
Yeah, which I did the pilot for that, too. Anyway, I was in an airport once, and I was just sitting there, reading a magazine, waiting to get on the plane. I don't even remember where I was.
Mm-hmm.
This man came up to me and said, "Are you Anne Lockhart?" And I looked at him and I went, "Yes." And he said, "Oh my God, you were everybody's girlfriend." And I thought, well, I never thought of it that way before. And then he said, "You're the female Don Stroud," which I just about fell out of my chair. I laughed so hard. But, I was like the girlfriend in all those, Barnaby Jones and Police Story and everything. Yeah.
I think that was his way of saying you're a journeyman actor.
Exactly. I knew what he meant, but the way he said it was just so funny. You were everybody's girlfriend.
How does Battlestar Galactica come into your life?
Oh, Oh, well, that's an interesting story. I had worked for Glenn Larson before. I had done Hardy Boys for him, and I really owe him so much. That man was such a champion of me and my work. Anyway, I was in my little house in Laurel Canyon had burned down in a fire that had started next door. So I was living with my mother on the couch while my landlords were rebuilding it. And Glenn Larson sent me an original early pilot script of Battlestar Galactica, which was not at all what ended up being filmed as the 2-hour pilot. This one was quite different, and it was mostly men, and pretty much one girl who came in every few pages. And I called this man up. I'd never met him. I called him up and got him on the phone and said, look, I'm really flattered, but I have to say no to this because I would want to do a good job for you. And in order to do a good job, I would have to be happy, and there's just really not enough here for me. And he said, well, we can always rewrite it. And I said, yeah, but I have to go on what you've given me to read.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I did it. I never met the man. I had $7 to my name and was living with my mother, and I turned down one of the biggest producers in television. So many months went by. The whole thing was rewritten, and we all know that it was like the biggest premiere. It was like bigger than Roots or something when it went on TV. And Jane Seymour did not want to do a series, so she didn't want to be in something forever. And so by this time, I had moved. I found another little house. My roommate and I were happy, and sure enough, Glenn Larson called me again and said, I have the opportunity to write a new character for the show, and I'm writing it for you. And he said, are you interested? And I said, yes. And he sent me the first 2 acts of The Living Legend. And I called him back up and said, what time do I start? So it was written, that role was written for me, and it was a much stronger character than anything that was in the original scripts that I read. I mean, Shiva didn't take any guff from anybody, but it was so nicely layered because she was this, brilliant warrior who, always tried to live up to her dad, Commander Kane, who always wanted a boy, and he got Shiva. But she was also so socially awkward. She was great in a military sense, but she was very awkward socially, which is what was so much fun to play with Richard Hatch, our kind of oil and water thing.
Yeah.
So that's a very long answer to how did Battlestar Galactica come into my life. It was written for me.
That's a perfect answer. You must have felt very accomplished, though, because after cutting your teeth doing guest starring roles in low-budget movies up to that point, it must have felt great to be a series regular.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and Shiva never fired her laser pistol. How come?
I didn't ever really realize that. I never did, huh? What do you know? I know that after we'd been off the air for about 10 years, somebody came up to me and said, do you realize that you were the first female military character in combat on a weekly basis? And I thought, really? I thought, no, wait a minute, what about Lieutenant Uhura, And they said, said, no, she never left the bridge. You were in combat.
Huh.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
I know. I guess if I probably never did fire my pistol, but I sure fired a lot of lasers out of that Viper.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that on the internet, like Eric Estrada and Larry Wilcox on Chips. They never drew their guns on that show. You know, same type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There again, somebody's girlfriend. I was yet another girlfriend role. But I was a cop, too. I was a other highway patrol person, too, on that show.
Yeah. Did the cast all get along on Battlestar?
Yes. Yes. There wasn't a bad apple in the bunch. I mean, we all genuinely liked each other. Mm-hmm. And all were certainly aware of how lucky we were. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a young actor, to be able to work with Lorne Greene and John Colicos and Fred Astaire, for God's sake, those opportunities were magnificent. And we did all genuinely like each other, and still do. We're all still in touch, and that's unheard of 40 years later. You know, usually you do a show and it ends and you say bye-bye, and then like maybe you run into somebody at the market or something. But we are all still in touch. I mean, our kids have had sleepovers together growing up, and you know, traveled together, and that's just pretty special.
Yeah.
In fact, there was I live in Texas, obviously, because you're calling in this time zone.
Right.
There was a show called All-Con in Dallas last year, and I've been going for years. It started really small, and I like to go and support local shows.
Yeah.
And this past year, I don't know how, the guy who runs it is Todd. He's so adorable. He always, offers me a hotel room. And I said, no, I don't spend that money. I live here. I'll just drive 25 minutes down to Fort Worth. So he managed to get us all together. And I said, okay, this year I want something. On Saturday, after we're done for the day, I want you to get a van and bring everybody to my house for dinner. And he did. And somebody said, oh, let's go to a restaurant. I went, no. Then if you do that, the person at one end of the table never gets to talk to the person at the other end of the table. And I said, you guys, this isn't going to be anything fancy. It's like Mexican food with paper plates and plastic cups. And Tommy, we had the best time. Mm-hmm. We were canceled so abruptly.
Yeah.
That we never had a cast party, so we finally did 40 years later.
Wow.
At mine. And it was, none of us had to be on. We were just hanging out. I mean, Dirk was on my porch smoking cigars. Lorette and Sarah helped me wash the dishes. Jack was sitting on my living room floor. Herb was animatedly telling stories in the front room. It was just wonderful. Mm-hmm. And we will do it again. The All-Con is, I can't remember if it's March or April, but we'll have everybody. I don't think Dirk can make it. I think he's got another appearance or something. But we're all gonna, I think this year I might do Chinese.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, Lorette Spang, she's supposed to come on the podcast this month. We haven't set a date yet, but I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, you're the first one from the cast that I'm interviewing. How was?
Well, ask her about the party at my house.
I will.
In Texas.
I will. How was Lorne Greene?
Lorne was lovely. Lorne was kind of like a dad to all of us.
Yeah.
And in my particular case, my father was a doctor, and he went to Queen's University University Medical School in Toronto. And he lived in a boarding house, and Lauren lives down the hall in another room.
Wow. Small world.
I know. Kind of cool.
Ed Begley Jr. did some episodes, too. I mean, that guy knows everybody in show business.
Yeah. Begley's cool.
I heard all the props and sets on the show ended up on the Buck Rogers series next.
Well, when I did Buck Rogers, when I showed up for work, I looked around and I thought, these are all our old sets painted hot pink and blue, because that was much more colorful. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
It just felt like I'd, gone into a color version of Galactica.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they did then. They always recycled sets, for budgetary reasons.
Still do. They still do.
They still do?
They recycle sets. They recycle stories.
Oh, of course. Everybody recycles stories. You did this.
I did an episode of Tales of the Gold Monkey. And
they
sent me the script, and I read it. And I walked into Don Belisario's office, and I said, "This is Red Eye from Galactica." He went, "Well, yeah, it is, but I just changed it up a bit."
You also did this sweet little dog movie called Hambone Hillie.
Yeah, that was a sweet movie. And it's kind of, there is another great gift. I worked with Lillian Gish. Good God.
Yeah.
I remember sitting one day, we were somewhere out in the valley, and it was hot, and she had a great big trailer, and there was a chunk of time when neither of us were working. And I went and I knocked on her door, and she said, "Come in," and she was resting on the bed, and I sat on the floor, and I just started talking to her, and she was amazing. She told me about, she said, well, when I was working for Mr. Griffith, she always called him Mr. Griffith, and my sister and I, her sister Dorothy, were making silent movies, and she said, I remember seeing these explosions in the sky. And, of course, she was in England looking across the English Channel at France, and it was World War I. I mean, she saw the invention of the telephone and the movie camera, and I said, and you never had children. You never married or had children. She said, no, I never married. I never had children. I had movies.
Oh.
To this day, I can see her saying it to me.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that's very sweet. She was a living legend.
And I also have the distinction, although we never worked together on that movie, of having been in a movie with O.J. Simpson.
Yeah. Pre-murder O.J., yeah.
And then I also did another really little cheapy straight-to-video vampire movie years later. And although I never worked with him, Kato Kaelin was in it.
Really?
So yeah, kind of crazy, huh?
It is. It's really crazy. Oh, man. You worked with Clint Walker in the Serpent Warriors.
Oh, God. You really have dug up the turkeys, haven't you?
Yeah,
Yes, I did. He was a very, very nice man. We shot it in Death Valley in the dead of winter. It was freezing, and I made an appointment at the Los Angeles Zoo because snakes are not my favorite thing, and I was supposed to be a scientist that actually handled them. So I made an appointment with, the snake dude over there and went and, kind of got used to snakes, kind of. But, yeah. And then I said, look, I want to meet the snake wrangler for the movie. So the director drove me way out to Thousand Oaks or something to go meet the snake wrangler. And when he opened the door, I went, Jules! It was the guy who had the monkey in BJ and the Bear.
Oh.
So I knew I was in good hands. But the funny thing is that, and they were supposed to be rattlesnakes, snakes shut down at like 50 degrees. They're warm climate animals. We were shooting at night, and it was like, 29 or something. And the snakes were like asleep. They were all wadded up together like piles of spaghetti, and they couldn't make them do anything. So they ended up using rubber snakes on strings that they pulled.
Oh, man. Eartha Kitt and Christopher Mitchum is in it, too.
Yeah. And there's another one I never thought I would work with, Eartha Kitt, as the snake queen or whatever she was. But Mitchum and I are still good friends. Chris and I are still good friends, low these years later.
Yeah. Here's a turkey that I've loved since I was 3. It was my earliest memory of you. Troll.
Oh, Troll. Troll. The best time I ever had on location, ever in my whole life.
Really?
Ever. We shot it in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
I took my best friend, Kay Lenz.
Yeah.
I turned in the first class ticket, and Kay and I went to Rome together, and I was there a month, and I worked 8 days.
Wow.
And my hotel was paid for. I had per diem. We met the Pope. We went to Venice. We went to Bologna. We went to Florence and saw the Statue of David. I mean, we just had the best. Us girls had the best time. I mean, and they would call and go, okay, well, we're going to need you tomorrow. And I go, no, I'm going to the Coliseum tomorrow. Could we move it a day?
Wow. Yeah, you played the younger version of your mother, which she ultimately gets turned into a tree stump.
It was so funny. Years and years ago, I never really have formally studied acting.
Yeah.
And somebody would say to me, well, do you take classes and, do those, sense memory kind of, imaginary things? And I said, no, I don't really need to pay somebody to tell me how to, pretend to be a tree. That'll never happen. Well, never say never. We get turned into a tree at the end of that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember just being terrified as a kid, though, because your mom transformed into you, and not only did I think you were beautiful, but I also thought that was real, and it freaked me out.
I was in an airport a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wait to get on a plane, and I go to, I'm in the security line, and I get up to the TSA lady and hand her my license and my boarding pass, and she looks at it and looked at me and went, oh, you were in Troll. That movie scared the daylights out of me when I was a little kid.
Yeah. I remember the first time I met Noah Hathaway at a convention, I told him, I said, that street and that apartment is too nice to be San Francisco, because that's where I'm born and raised. And even in 1985, San Francisco did not look that beautiful.
My little Noah, my darling Noah. That was fun being over there with him.
Yeah, he was supposed to do the podcast a couple of years ago, and I never heard back from him. I saw him at another convention and asked him if he wanted to come on and stuff. But hopefully someday I'll get to interview him. I love that scene at the end when the family is leaving and the apartment. They're leaving the apartment, and the police and the bystanders are all there, and then you show up looking like you're about to go on vacation, and you say to Noah, "Hey, you did pretty good in there for a human."
Yeah.
You worked with Michael Moriarty again on Dark Tower.
Yes. And we shot that in Barcelona.
Yeah.
And actually, that turned out to be my honeymoon. Because my husband and I had never had a honeymoon, and he came over to Barcelona, and then we went to Paris. After we finished shooting, we went to Paris, and visited my girlfriend in Geneva and had a nice little trip of it.
Mm-hmm. Jenny.
Went to Madrid.
Mm-hmm. Jenny Agutter. God, how great was she?
Jenny Agutter, was she in that movie?
Oh, yeah.
I never worked with her.
Oh, you never worked with her?
I don't think I had any scenes with her.
Yeah. She's one of my childhood crushes. That's why I had to ask.
Yeah, I don't think I had any scenes with Jenny, but, I mean, God, you're going back so far. You know, I have to try and remember this stuff.
Yeah.
I was just Michael Moriarty's wife and telling him things were spooky, and then I get murdered in an elevator.
Yeah.
It was my last scene. I got murdered in an elevator, and they sprayed fake blood everywhere. And when I got back to the hotel and took a shower, I couldn't get, my hair had turned pink. I couldn't get it out of my hair. I shampooed my head like 10 times. I called the hairdresser, and I went, I have big hair. And I guess whatever they used for fake blood in Spain had, like, soaked into my blonde highlights that I'd had put in. It was awful. It took forever.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of hair.
Nowadays no one would even look at me twice because, you know, you go to the market and there's old ladies with pink hair and green hair and purple hair. Everybody has weird colored hair now.
Speaking of hair, I remember you did an episode of Freddy's Nightmares, the Elvis sighting episode, and
Yeah.
I remember you had like real 80s hair in that episode.
Real short and permed and poofed up, yeah.
Yeah. So with all these B movies and television series that you were on, I noticed too you did a lot of uncredited roles in very popular mainstream movies, such as Convoy, E.T., Risky Business, City Slickers, Basic Instinct, just to name a few. How did you end up getting tiny parts like that?
It's all voice work, honey.
It's all voice work.
Yeah. It's all voice work. And some of them are credited, some of them aren't, but it's all voice work. I've been doing voice work since the mid-'70s. And, you know, I had girlfriends back then who would look at me and say, you do what? For union minimum and no billing? And I'd go, uh-huh. As long as the check clears, I'm a happy girl. And I'm still doing it. I'm in my 8th season of Chicago Fire. I also do Chicago PD. I'm the dispatcher on Chicago Fire. Mm-hmm. I also do Chicago PD and Chicago Med, and I've done, God, I don't know how many Law & Orders, Law & Order SVU. I mean, there's so many, I can't remember them, hundreds and hundreds of them. But it's a good living, and it's, I've been very lucky that I created this line of work, because as you get older, you know, there aren't that many roles, and I'm not quite Betty White yet, so I'll be playing those. But it's voice work, and it's such fun. And I mean, I speak languages, I do accents. It's great. And I, you know, aside from like when I do Chicago Fire, I'm not only just the dispatcher, I'm like the background people on the street, and because those people are extras, and if they speak, they have to be paid more. So we go in and give them all voices, and if it's done properly, you wouldn't really ever notice it. But I mean, what other line of work can you go to work in the morning and be 40 people in one day, 40 different characters?
Right. How did you initially get into voiceover work? Was that just, you know, something that people were doing back then?
No, nobody was doing it back then. It's from Joyride, actually. Mm-hmm. We had gone in to do some looping, some revoicing on Joyride, which is, you know, when the track isn't clear and they need to put your voice in there. And it was the end of the day, and the post-production supervisor was a wonderful man who started me in this business in voice work named Norman Schwartz. Mm-hmm. It was the end of the day, and I had a long speech in the car on the ferry, and it was like a half-a-page speech. And the producer said, I have to loop you because, I had a line where I said, I've pedaled my ass for years. Now it's your turn. You pedal it. And I also said, I'm being dragged around here like a sack of shit. And now here, I told you I was never going to cuss, but these are actual words from the movie.
Yeah.
And the producer said, I have to cut away from you when you say those words because you look right into the camera. And I said, no, you don't. The word ass looks just like act. And the word shit looks just like junk. So I will say, I've peddled my act for years, and I'm being hauled around like a sack of junk. And he went, my God, you're right. So Norman Schwartz, it was the end of the day, and he said, well, I've got this cued line by line to do it. And I went, you know what, would you just play it for me? Play the scene for me? And he did. And I said, okay, let's go. And I did the entire speech with all the correct breaths and pauses and replaced the two words in one take. And at the end of it, Norman looked at me and said, I've never seen anybody do that. Do you do foreign to English? And I went, no, but I'd like to. And he started me in the voice business.
Nice. It's always great to have friends in the business that, from what I've gathered, you know?
Well, he was a friend, but I never met him until that day. It wasn't, he just saw that I could do this and hired me repeatedly for years. It wasn't, we became friends later, but no, he hired me because he knew I could deliver, not because I knew him.
Mm-hmm. Is it true that you were the first choice to play Jamie Lee Curtis's role in Halloween?
I've heard that so many times that, I had a manager at the time.
Yeah.
And it's possible that he turned it down before I ever heard about it, but I never was given a script. I never auditioned. But apparently that's like, what John Carpenter apparently said. Yeah. But I never knew about it. This manager kept a lot from me. I remember after, a year or so, he went, I've been saving this for you. And it was a telegram from the Hollywood Foreign Press asking me to be Miss Golden Globes. I had no idea about that either.
Oh my God, that's terrible. But, Jamie Lee Curtis, it was a blessing and a curse for her, from what I've seen, so.
Well, I thought she was wonderful in it, and she's a good girl.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it worked out for the best for you.
Everything works out the way it's supposed to, it all does.
Absolutely. Everything happens for a reason. You mentioned earlier that you did one of the Gidget pilots. It was the one with Karen Richmond, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Don Strauss. And Bill Shallert was in it, and I don't remember who else, but
yeah,
it was. I was LaRue, and then when the series was picked up, they replaced me with another LaRue.
Yeah, Karen's coming back on the podcast later today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, tell her I said hi. She's a sweet girl.
She is. I will. I know. She's one of my favorite guests and favorite people. I also see that you're active in charities for horses and for children with autism. Anything there you'd like to elaborate on?
Well, I was one of the founders of the Ben Johnson Pro Celebrity Rodeos in 1983. Mm-hmm. And at the height of it, we had them in 6 different cities. And we raised a tremendous amount of money for children's charities over those years. And as an offshoot of that, I helped start the Roundup for Autism, which has just finished its 26th year. Geez, I think 26. And it's, celebrities competing on horseback in roping and team penning and cutting and stuff like that.
Yeah, horses.
I remember the first Ben Johnson, we couldn't get anybody except some stunt guys, you know. They would say, you're having a what? And you want celebrities to do what? And later on it became such a hot ticket we were turning people away. But the very first one was held in Simonton, Texas. It was an outdoor arena with a tin roof, and we had a Miss Texas or a Miss America who was from Texas there. Bob Eubanks was there, and they wanted some music, and somebody said, "Oh, there's this guy who lives down the road right here, and he has a band. Maybe he'll do it." It was George Strait. Nobody ever heard of him before.
Wow.
And it was there, actually, at that rodeo that I met Buck Taylor, who ended up being my father-in-law.
Wow. Oh, it's funny how life works out. Yeah. Horses are wonderful animals, and the autism thing though, that tugs my heartstrings because I was in special ed in school. I have Asperger's syndrome and learning disabilities, and I admire anybody who can help people with that disability.
Well, it's been a great pleasure, a personal pleasure of mine to be involved with the ACC here in Texas all these years. And, you know, the fact that my friend Bobby Norris started this because his daughter Audra has autism. And the fact, you know, I remember when it got to 1 in 100 births would be an autistic child, and now it's so much higher, and it's, you know, can't give up on it. Cannot give up on it.
You can't give up on it, no. There's so much more out there for it now than it was when I was growing up. I mean, my parents just struggled with me, I'll tell you. In school, there was a lot of meetings, you know, where they wanted to get rid of me, and my mom fought for me till the very end.
Well, there are so many, there's so much more education about it now. There are so many more services available.
Yeah.
It's so much better understood now than it was 30 years ago.
Yeah. I think there's...
So the fact that whatever I have done or participated in might have had some tiny effect on that makes me very pleased.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot less ignorance, too, from certain people. I think it just...
Well, and the stigma of it was, you know, not... The stigma of it was so terrible, and now it's not so stigmatized.
Absolutely. So, is it January 31st and February 1st, the Hollywood show?
Yes. And it's back at the Burbank Marriott this year.
Oh, wow. I go there for Son of Monster Palooza every year. It's a little...
Well, it had been at the airport. The Marriott or the Westin. I can't remember which one. I think
LAX.
Now it's back at Kovac, which is where it was years ago.
Yeah.
It's a little more intimate.
Yeah, I think it was at the LAX for a while. But, yeah, it's a nice little venue there. But you mentioned the conventions earlier and the signings and stuff. You like doing all that?
I do. It's, you know, lovely to get to meet people and talk to them. I don't do that many of them. I mean, some people, gosh, they're gone every weekend, but I did a whole bunch of them, like in the early 90s, and I had to, you know, my kids were little, and I was away from my kids every weekend, so I kind of cut that back, and now I just do a few, and it's also kind of hard with my Chicago schedule, you know, so.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I did 3 or 4 a year, maybe half a dozen.
I'm a late bloomer with the conventions. What was it like in the early 90s?
Oh, they were huge.
were still huge.
I mean, I was amazed at how big they were. I mean, this is before, like, you know, now there's like corporations that run like Comic-Con and those other shows that are, you know, those are just big machines. But there were lots of them, and they were mostly, you know, run by one or two guys, and it was lots of fun.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, think that there would be one every weekend?
No. But then if you had told me 40 years ago that people would line up 12 deep to get a picture of me in a spacesuit from 1978, I would have just laughed in your face and said, you must be kidding. So it's really an honor to know, you know, I always was conscious of how I affected people in my performances and what I did. I always tried to do a good job. But I had one lady come up to me, this might have been in the 90s, in Florida, and she says, because of you, I wanted to learn how to fly. And so when I got old enough as a teenager, I started to take flying lessons, and I got my pilot's license. And I said, that's really cool. What are you doing now? And she said, I'm flying 737s for FedEx, and I'm hoping to get a passenger airplane job.
Oh.
You know? And, you know, you wake up, you learn your lines, you go to work in the morning, you do your job, and come home and wait for the check. I certainly didn't wake up every day and say, I am off to influence a generation of young women today, you know?
Yeah.
And I've been told, another lady told me that because of, she was bullied horribly by the neighborhood kids,
mm-hmm.
and she said, we used to play Battlestar Galactica, and I always said, I'm Shiva, because she doesn't take any bullying. And she said, your strength, your character's strength, got me through being bullied as a kid. You know, I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
So I'm very, and I can't really think of any other business or venue such as these conventions where you can find this information out about how you affected people personally.
Right. Yeah, I don't think anybody wakes up every day and says, I'm going to influence a generation of people. And if they do, they're misguided and delusional.
Or they have egos that are beyond, you know?
Well, that's what it is. They're delusional and misguided. Yeah. Do you have any upcoming projects you can mention?
Well, I'm still doing the Chicago stuff, and it looks like once those things go down for hiatus, which should be about mid-May, I think, I mean, it's not firm yet. We don't have a date. But I think I'm going to be doing Suddenly Last Summer. I'm going to play Violet in Suddenly Last Summer, which is a Tennessee Williams play.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be in Louisiana.
Nice.
And there's another movie that I did that I really don't know what's going on with it. I don't know if it has distributorship yet. I think it's still doing the festival circuit. But, man, it's such a cool story. I would have paid them to let me be in it. I don't have a big part in it. It's called The Silence Natural.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I've had Barry Pearl and Kathleen Kinmon on talking about that movie.
There you go. Then you don't need me to tell you about it. It's the coolest thing ever about this guy that nobody ever heard of, and he's the reason we have hand signals in baseball.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I want to see that movie so bad because I think it's just a wonderful idea for a movie.
And it's a true story, you know. I just, and nobody knows who this guy is. Dummy Hoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. God. That's just amazing. That's like that, oh, God, who's the guy, the baseball player back in the 40s? He played with one arm, Pete something.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't call his name right now, but, well, I'm glad you know about The Silent Natural, so keep your fingers crossed that it goes somewhere.
I sure will, and I hope I get to see it. And this was such a dream. Thank you so much. I hope I made it easy for you.
Oh, you did. I mean, you made it very easy. I figured I babbled way too much. But, anytime I can help you.
They want to hear you, not me.
You know what? I'll tell you one other thing.
Okay.
There's another convention that I'm going to do after the Hollywood show.
Right.
In Gallifrey 1, it's Doctor Who convention, and it's at the LAX Marriott or Westin. I'm not sure which, but that's Valentine's Day weekend.
Nice. I hope Lori books you for the Bay Area or something, so I can come meet you.
Well, get on her case, okay?
I will. I will. Well, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day and a great time at all the conventions.
I will, and it's been a pleasure, Tommy. Thank you. And if I can ever help you again, you got my number.
Wonderful, wonderful. Have a great day.
All right, darling. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Anne Lockhart. Ain't she a sweetheart? Oh, thank you so much, Lori, for connecting Anne and I. She is a sweet lady, a really sweet lady, and I am just so grateful for the people I interview. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.